What's going on, guys? Jesse DeRozier here with Hydrilla Gorilla Guide Service on Lake Guntersville. Today's date is 11/22/24, and this is week 4 of my new series entitled What's on the Deck. So without further ado, we'll go ahead and get started and cover the lures that we threw this week during our guide trips, and then at the end we'll discuss the weather that's forecast for next week and what changes I foresee taking place in the next couple of days. So same as last week, we'll go through the same process, basically talking about 3 different locations that these fish have been basically located and different ways to attack and catch them. So first and foremost has been the bait balls. Early in the mornings, they've been out deeper, adjacent to the flats that they're on in the afternoon, but they're dropping off into the ditches and creek channels and drains. And the best way that you can attack those probably is getting underneath the bait ball schools, and in order to do that is a good way is an Alabama rig. The Alabama rig, being able to see on your live scope, or if you have to count it down or whatever you need to do, if you can get it directly underneath the school, those fish are feeding from underneath early in the mornings. And if you do have live scope, you'll see them down below the bait ball, so you'll know whether or not they're being actively fed on. Throw it out there, let it sink down to the bottom of the bait school, and just bring it back. Keep it between the fish and the bottom of the bait ball, and that's where you're going to get your bites at. The old-fashioned jigging spoon is another weapon to be able to throw and get underneath those bait balls, yo-yoing it back up off the bottom, and again, as it flutters back down, they'll take advantage of it thinking it's an injured minnow. But that is what that bait used to look like, and that is what this one currently looks like. And all I've done is just add a teaser tail to it. But those baits are from Academy Sports. It's just a piece of lead, but fish will absolutely eat them this time of year. A lot of lead lures are very deadly as the water temperature continues to get colder and colder and all the way through winter. So keep that in mind. These old school baits are definitely a way to go a lot of times when the bite does get tough. The small swim bait, a little 2.8 Kitech on a little lead head, that or an underspin, basically same deal. Throw it out. This time let it go to the bottom. A lot of those fish that are underneath or around these bait balls are setting down on the bottom. You'll have some that are up and actively feeding, but some will actually be setting on the bottom. And for those fish, I'm going with that little swim bait and dragging it along the bottom. So as the fish continue to move and they start to come up in the water column as the day progresses, the water warms, the shad will go from being in a ball in these creek channels to starting to lift towards the surface. And as the bait balls get a little bit higher, you can downsize your A-rig and keep it really high in the water column. Or again, as they move into the flats and get up onto the flats, a little tiny A-rig with very light weights. That's actually the Mooch minnow from Crush City that are set up on that. But that little lightweight Alabama rig would be a great rig to be able to throw up there in those shallow areas where you can't run a standard A-rig. It's going to be a lot more quiet presentation, but still give you that schooling presentation that these fish are keyed in on. And then also that small profile is key. As far as other presentations as these fish continue to move up in the water column is going to be going to jerk baits. Again, I prefer a downsized jerkbait if I can get away with it. These are both like around 4 inches, maybe 4 1/4 inches. This is an old Smithwick Rattling Rogue. This one is a silent version. So when I say that, it's got a little bit of noise to it, but not much at all, versus that one. So if there's a lack of wind or very little wind, I tend to go with the more silent. And then if I've got ripples or windy days, I'm going with that SPRO mixed stick and getting that in around those schools where they can find it even in those windy conditions. If they've gotten up really, really shallow where you can't get that jerk bait up there, or you can't get that little mini A-rig up there, going with a fluke. You can throw it right in amongst the grass, twitch it around. They are schooling on some of these shad up in literally 1.5 feet, 2 foot of water. So that's about one of the only presentations you can really efficiently get in there and kind of represent what they're eating, and they will absolutely crush that. The lipless as well has been one this week that we've been throwing, and the reason for that is we had these colder temperatures come in later in the week, and so I went to the 3/4 ounce and went out deeper because a lot of the bait fish weren't coming up until real late in the day, and so we were throwing 3/4 ounce. And again, not just shad patterns, but this time of year the craw patterns start to come back into play as well. So don't be afraid to change up your colors, and that's a key thing right now. You'll see in the next lures that I'm fixing to talk about that throwing a diversity of colors can make a big difference based on whether it's water conditions, cloud conditions, time of day. Those factors kind of come into play, and overall the light penetration and what these fish are actually seeing. So talking about that, out deeper, I've been throwing the Normans, the deep little end, and then this is the middle end. So the translucent colors in cleaner water. A lot of these creeks have cleared up finally and gotten fairly clear, so running a translucent bait has been a key. If I've got cloudy conditions, which we had quite a bit of this week, going with painted. That again is the deep little end and the baby end. So this one will dive 12 feet, this one will dive 6 to 8 feet. The painted sides on that lavender shad, that color is absolutely dynamite. This I've been throwing more so around main river areas. The water's still got a little bit more stain to it than it does in the creeks. So again, making color adjustments based on light penetration. Up in the shallows, a square bill. And again, you know, options as far as colors, so don't be afraid to mix and match based on where you're at. But the square bills have finally come into play. The topwater baits late in the afternoon have been really, really good option to get you some bigger bites. So for that, as a full-size bone-colored spook, and the tiny, this is a Bill Dance spitting image, and this bait has been out for a long time, and they're no longer sold, but you can still get them on eBay and places like that. But that little bait's got a difference in sound. So this one has that big one knocker, this one's got those little BBs. Playing with sound, sizes, and colors right now is a big factor in continuing to get bites. These fish will get keyed in to the sounds or the presentation of what you're throwing, and then they'll start to ignore it. They'll realize it. They're like, oh, okay, I keep seeing the same thing over and over and over again. So change up your lures. You will get more bites. Changing from the bait balls and the shad, going more to the grass flats. The grass flats has been probably one of my favorite ways to chase fish this time of year, just because I love throwing moving baits. If you look at everything that I'm throwing primarily has been moving baits. For those, you can never beat throwing a vibrating jig. These work great in that 4 to 6 foot of water, which is where a lot of these fish have been located at. The second to that would be throwing a swim jig or the producer Swimbaits Swiminator in that 3.5 inch. That's an owner flashy swimmer hook. It's a 1/4 ounce 5/0 hook with that willow leaf blade. And these two presentations work really great in that 3 or 4 foot of water where those grass clumps are still there, but they're thicker clumps. You can't run that chatterbait because you'll constantly get fouled up on the blade. But these two presentations will allow for you to get in there and work around that grass. And as this water temperatures get colder and colder, these fish want to be around the grass clumps. It holds heat throughout the night and allows for them to remain a lot more comfortable than just being out in open water unless they go deeper. And that's the reason why the shad move out into the deeper water during the night. So the fish that don't want to leave and follow the shad, the ones that are remaining on the flats, they're going to be around those grass clumps. If you end up with a change in weather conditions where you don't have windy conditions, which right now in the fall time typically we're going to have wind, that's what helps knock the leaves out of the trees. But if you do get a bluebird day or something like that, making adjustments, put those moving baits down, and you're going to end up having to make a change and go to something like a rage craw. Put it on a Texas rig, or taking out either a Senko or a speed worm, ultravibe speed worm, any of the above would work, and go in around those same little grass clump areas and fish that on a light Texas rig. And when I say light, I'm talking like an 1/8 ounce to 3/16. You want to be able to keep it up above those grass clumps and not be like burying in the grass. So you want to be able to flutter kind of up and over them and settle down onto the grass without just punching through it. As far as punching grass, that is the third option that I would say that you've got, is your grass mats. The grass mats are breaking up. They are falling. As we get these colder temperatures, the grass begins to sink in the lake, and so there's fewer topped out grass mats, which does concentrate the fish. So that's a plus. There's less ground to cover, and there's more fish per square acre now underneath these grass clumps. But the catch to that is there's also more fishermen who are wanting to fish that pattern, now contending for that smaller area of grass. So for that pattern, I would go with a punch bait, probably being number one. Go with a D-bomb or any beaver style bait and go in there and punch the grass. Right now, as the grass is thinning out, you no longer need that, ounce to 1/4 ounce and a half weight. You're able to get through probably with a 3/4 to a quarter, or 3/4 to a 1 ounce weight, and get that down to those fish without making a big loud splash and spooking the fish. So definitely make that adjustment as these grass mats continue to thin out. The second way to attack the grass mats is going to be throwing a frog. I love a SPRO frog over the grass mats. The eelgrass is cleared out. Primarily you're left with just the hydrilla, the milfoil, the coontail, the sago. Those grasses allow for this to become a very viable option now. The fish can see enough through the mat now to see your frog and come up and get on it. Whereas before, the mats were so thick that you had to wait your frog a lot of times for it to depress, for them to pick it out and be able to come up and feed on it without knocking it out of the way. Well, now they can actually get to your frog. So now there's no need for that added weight. Just get out there and sling that frog around. You'll get the bites. But that's primarily my three patterns of what I would say would be the best ways to attack the lake right now. The main one that we did this week was the grass flats and the bait balls. So we ran those two. We did not do any punching or frogging this week. That said, the weather coming up for this coming week. So they're showing for the next couple of days a little bit of a warming trend. We had a massive cold front that came in at the tail end of this week, that when I had done this last week, I didn't see them forecasting a cold front until the next day. They ended up showing that there was a cold front coming in, and it did. But the good thing is that cold front definitely had some good effects. 2 days ago, we had a 7-pounder caught out of a lady fishing off the back deck. And today we had a gentleman that broke his PB 3 different times throughout the day. And his biggest one ended up being a 5.5 at the end of the day. But the bigger bites are coming. Those bigger fish moving up in the shallows, and it is time to feed. So if you've been waiting for this fall feed to climax and get right, it's here. The water temp today was 59 degrees. So we finally broke that threshold and got below 60. And we've got a major cold front coming again this week. So the water temps are going to drop. When we hit that 52 to 55 degrees, it's going to be right. It's going to be on fire. So if you've been waiting to get out here, waiting for that right time to be here, it's coming this week. Which I know everybody's traveling for the holidays, which means there's fewer boats out there kind of messing with these fish as well. But they are going to feed this week. These colder temperatures, we're having some really cold nights. They're showing next Friday actually being below freezing during the night at 30 degrees. So it's going to knock these water temps down very quickly this week. And it's going to tell these fish we've got to feed, and we've got to feed now. So this week is going to be probably the fall feast. This is going to be the time that these big fish are really coming in and going to be the most vulnerable to getting caught. So hope to see you guys out on the water this coming week. I'm going to be a little bit limited myself this week on time frame, as I'm sure a lot of people are. They're going to be traveling and doing their thing as well. But I've got some things that I've got to take care of, and I'm going to be a little bit limited on my time on the water as well. So I'm not 100% sure if I'll do a video this coming Friday or not, but we'll see, how much I actually make it out on the water this week. But until then, guys, tight lines, and hope to see you out there. Have a good one.